Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today's guest is Aspen Moulden, Chief Marketing Officer for Logitech for Business. Aspen is the head of global marketing for Logitech's enterprise hybrid work solutions business, with her team focusing on brand, demand generation, thought leadership content, partner and channel marketing, marketing operations, and program management across a Logitech for Business marketing organization. She has spent more than 2 decades building marketing teams and growth businesses for enterprise technology, SaaS, and collaboration platforms. Earlier in her career, she helped build the marketing team at Blue Jeans, one of the early pioneers in cloud video collaboration, and later helped scale Logitech's video collaboration business significantly over the last 7 years. Aspen has also founded her own consulting firm, Aspen Inspired, helping companies develop positioning, marketing infrastructure, and high-performing teams. She brings a deep growth mindset and a track record of building high-performing teams that consistently exceed expectations. Today, we're talking about leadership, growth, and marketing. Aspen, as the listeners can hear from my intro, you're extremely busy, so I am so fortunate and thankful, and I want to welcome you to the Moving Forward podcast.
I'm so happy to be here and really excited for the discussion.
So Aspen, my first question I have for you is you've spent much of your career in high growth technology companies. What originally drew you to that environment?
I will say I've actually never applied for a job in my career, which is a really rare thing to be able to say. And right out of college, I had a job in a completely different industry, and someone referred me to apply for a job at a company back then called Polycom, which was at the time a startup in this collaboration space way back in 1994. So I applied for the job, I got the role, and soon fell in love with startups. So because we were about 130 people at the time, it gave me really the ability to see so many different aspects across the organization. When you're that small, you're close to the leadership, you're close to the executives, you're close to the sales team, the product teams, the marketing teams. And so it really drew me in because I could have my hands in kind of all of the different pots and start to see really how an organization is built from the ground up. And I just fell in love with the startup environment. It gave me so much exposure that I don't think I would have had I gone into a specific role in a large organization. So that's really where my passion for that type of environment started.
So when you reflect on that in your career journey, even stuff that I shared in the intro, is there a decision though, or a risk or a moment that helped you lay the foundation to really where you are today?
Yes. I mean, I will say I was very naive coming out of college with that being my first job because I landed in a place that went public in 2 years. And so at 24, 25 years old, I thought this is what corporate America was like, and that you just got a job, you went public, you got to learn all of these things. But then I quickly learned when I moved on to my next startup that was absolutely luck at that time and not really what happens regularly. But that passion for that really early seed stage startup and like being at the ground floor was just something that was so exciting to me because in the early stages of my career, I held so many different jobs. And I felt for a very long time like it didn't look good on my resume that I jumped from role to role. But
Mm.
later, as I matured, I realized, I really became a jack of all trades because I was able to learn so many different aspects of the business. And that really just fueled. So that was kind of like the deciding factor for me is I wanted to learn more and take on different capabilities and learn different skill sets that I wouldn't have had set. I just went into marketing or I just went into sales. I really wanted to understand the entire organizational dynamic.
Yeah, if I can just say too, you've built yourself up to be very marketable, is what it was.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so you talked about college, and in college, I didn't say this in the intro, but that you played softball in college. What did that experience teach you about competition and team performance that you do still use today?
Yeah, I mean, sports really shaped who I am. I've played sports since I was probably about 5 years old, consistently and always on a team sport. I played soccer through high school and softball, and then softball I continued playing through college. And I did try individual sports and I didn't like them as much. I loved the team environment. I loved people coming together and actually, if you think about a soccer game, it's not necessarily the person that scored the goal, right? It's all the work that happens in the back half of the field to get the ball into a position for someone to score. That to me is just so exciting. And when you have a team that is a well-oiled machine that knows the strengths and weaknesses of the other members of the team, it just makes you so much stronger. So, for me, I approach a team that way, whether I'm the leader or not. Like, what are the dynamics of the team and how do we play off of each other? And then as a leader, I really look across my team to determine where are the strengths and weaknesses of the teams and how do I pair people up within the organization to make sure that we have checks and balances. Because if you don't have those checks and balances in place, you really aren't always doing the best by the individuals on the team and the organization. So, I bring sports mentality to everything that I do, and I'm highly competitive. So, that always helps. But I think that there's a true dynamic in the way that teams play together, and the best coaches I've had don't rely on standout players. They rely on the whole. So that is something that I definitely take with me in terms of leadership and teams.
Yeah, as we always hear, the cliche is there's no I in team. I'll just throw that out
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm sure the listeners can hear that you definitely lead with growth, tenacity, and instinct. So when things don't go as planned, what do you rely on to reset and move forward?
It's a great question. I have a rule that I kind of tell all of my teams, and that is I am not afraid of failure. I feel like if you don't make mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. So a big thing for me is to fail fast. I do think you need to make educated decisions. So you need to, if you're going to take a risk or try something you maybe haven't done before and you're not quite sure what the outcome will be, you need to kind of calculate what the risks are and whether or not if it doesn't work, how will it impact the business. I'll give you an example of something we recently did. We're a B2B organization, so we are really marketing to other businesses. Logitech on the other side of the house markets to consumers, individuals. And so those two motions are very different from a marketing and sales perspective. And we just recently came out of South by Southwest, which is a big event that happens annually in Austin, Texas. It's a music festival, it's a film festival, and it's a technology festival. And most of the people that attend that are individuals and not necessarily our target buyers. But we had the opportunity to try that. It was a significant investment. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to play out. And in the end, we became one of the kind of hot spots at South by Southwest a couple of weeks ago. And it was really like, how were we going to show up and what did we want anybody who visited our activations to take away with them? And so in one location, we had Logi Work on Wheels, which is a big trailer that we pull out and it has all of our tech inside. It's kind of like a mobile office, if you will, so people can understand what we sell. And then we created a lounge environment where people who were attending South by Southwest could pop in. We set up our workspaces and people could actually work in between, bands or, other sessions that they were attending. And what happened was um, a bunch of people, influencers and journalists came in and they did all of their work and published all their stories using Logitech technology. And the next thing I knew, I was getting pings from our CEO saying she was being pinged by her former colleagues telling her how cool Logitech showed up at South by Southwest.
Cool.
And so, that was a risk that we took. And we went into it thinking, okay, well, if this doesn't go well, what do we lose? We really didn't lose anything, maybe some financial investment, but we were showing up and we became a brand that people just love. And
Mhm.
all we could hear the whole week was, oh my gosh, we love Logitech. I have a Logitech mouse, and people were sending screenshots of the lounge to their bosses and they were like, we need to buy those products. So it ended up working out for us. So I guess I would say, to answer your question again, when things don't go as planned, as long as you put the work in to determine what the risk and the cost analysis is, it's okay to fail, and fail fast, because it actually gives you an experience to know the next time you need to make a decision what worked and what didn't work. And so I am a risk taker. I allow my teams to take risks as well. And I really believe no risk, no reward. If you keep kind of doing the same status quo, you're not going to get anything new or great out of it. So that's really how I approach risk taking.
So there's two things I just want to talk about what you just said too. And I know the listeners, whether it's business or education, a lot of what you're saying, it's okay to fail. I'm hoping educators understand that too, and that we get that point across to kids, to children that are growing up, and it is okay. You'll learn a lot from that.
You
Um,
really do.
yeah, and in today's world, to be able to help kids understand it's okay. Take that risk. So on that note, you are a risk taker and you said it. But what's one risk that you've taken that helped contribute to where you are today? And what did you learn from it?
Mm. I have taken a few jobs that I probably shouldn't have taken. I've mentioned earlier, I haven't ever had to apply for a job. I've always been referred into something, or a former boss has recommended me. Um, and I'm very grateful for that. One thing that's really important to me is my integrity. I won't sacrifice my integrity for a job or for a company. It's really what I own. And so, I've been fortunate to, I think, move throughout my career based on my integrity and the way that I show up. But I've taken jobs where I've kind of felt maybe talked in to a role that I knew from the get-go wasn't right for me, but I was either doing it because I believed so strongly in the leader, or I wanted to try something different. And, those jobs just never felt good or were the right places for me to be. And in some of those cases, I left really great places, to go try something new. And in hindsight, I would say felt some regret, for leaving that. But then now, later down the road, like, had I not done those things, there is learnings in there that I probably have taken with me. And so I know my strengths, I know where my passion lies, and I know what I don't want to do. And so had I not explored other areas and stayed in a safe space, I probably wouldn't be in the role that I'm in today. So regardless of taking risks in your role or taking a role as a risk, you do get something out of it. And maybe that role didn't work out, but I feel like it's led me to where I am today. So grateful for those, probably not in the moment, but later.
So when you talk about that with different companies that you went to, what growth is truly part of a company's DNA? And how does it manifest in the ways that teams operate and make decisions?
Yeah. So growth to me, I worked for a really, really smart man twice, and he's a serial entrepreneur. And, he pushed us over and over again for growth. And when I was younger in my career, I really was like, well, things are working well. So, like, why do we need to change it? We're doing really well. But he was always looking 100 feet ahead. And he would say, if you're paying attention to the headlines, you're behind. If you're paying attention to the trend lines, you're looking forward. And that was something that has just always stuck with me because if you're reading the news, it's already happening. If you're thinking beyond the news, then you're innovating. And so he would always look at the intersection of trends and where they could potentially meet up. And that's how he came up with his business ideas,
Mm.
which was so fascinating to me. So he was a founder of Blue Jeans, which was one of the early cloud video collaboration startups prior to like Zoom. And he was really looking, he wasn't from the industry, but he was really looking at trends. And so he saw video collaboration trending, he saw the cloud trending, he saw the need for remote communication and collaboration coming on the rise. And he saw the need for disparate technologies to work together. So he pulled all of those elements in and formed a company which was Blue Jeans that kind of was the intersection of all of those things. And so that is 100% what I've taken with me since that learning. And
Mm.
I'm always interested in looking forward and not at what's happening today. And I think that is the growth mindset. The growth mindset isn't what is everybody else doing and oh, we need to catch up. The growth mindset is what's happening and what are they not doing that we can be doing so that we stand out and differentiate ourselves. And we're in an incredibly muddy market sometimes. If you go look at all the competition and how they talk about what they do, we all sound relatively similar. We talk about remote work, work from home, hybrid work, return to office. So my big thing right now is like, how does Logitech set itself apart from, I call it the sea of sameness, where we all just kind of keep repeating the same things, and how do we distinguish ourselves and really elevate what we're talking about? And there's a lot of things that Logitech can pull from its DNA to help tell a different story. And so that growth mindset is something that you always need to have, because if you don't have it, you're really just focusing on what's happening in the here and now, and not what's happening in the future.
So I'm a true advocate of growth mindset and, fixed mindset. Have we stay there, we're fixed. So obviously you talked a lot just now, even about growth mindset. And again, I want lens to be, for people that are listening on educators and people in business and leaders. So with that growth mindset, what's one habit or mindset shift that helps leaders keep growing instead of getting comfortable?
I would say something that it's kind of been, I wouldn't say beat into me, but it's been kind of, reinforced, I will say in better words, is metrics and measurements. That is something that I tend to, for many years, shy away from. I was like, I don't want to measure everything that we do. You really have to. And
Mm.
so if you don't go into something with metrics and measurement and goals in mind, you really can't see how you're performing against, whatever your objectives are. So everything my team does, we measure. And as busy as we are, a marketing team is never done. I joke with my team that, sales can finish a quarter and then they have a reprieve for a few weeks. I'm like, marketing's job is never done. We're always marching forward. Unless you have measurements and you're holding yourself accountable to those measurements, you really can't, determine whether or not you're succeeding, and that growth mindset of how you're going to push yourself further forward. So my team and I tend to approach everything that we do with, we did this extremely well last time. We blew it out of the water. What are we going to do this next time to even, take it up a notch? And
Mhm.
so events that we do or campaigns that we do, we always set a higher bar for the next. And if we don't obtain it, then we figure out why. Is it a messaging thing? Is it a targeting thing? What didn't work? But unless you're holding yourself accountable with those metrics, you really can't figure out whether or not you're growing in the right way. And your growth targets can change based on what you're trying to accomplish. It's not always either revenue or leads. It can be, are we growing within each account? Are we acquiring new customers?
Mhm.
There's so many different ways to look at it, but it really needs to align itself to the overall goals of the business. So marketing can't have one set of goals and sales have another. They really need to come together and be in support of each other. So, that is something that we work really closely with other teams for cross-functional alignment to make sure that we're headed in the same direction.
So as I listen to you and you talk about the here and now and the trending. Industries are moving fast. You're in a very fast, well, everybody is. Industries are moving fast. Leaders often have to make decisions with incomplete information. So, how do you approach these moments?
I'm living that right now. We have some big things. This is probably going to be our biggest year ever from a marketing output perspective. We have a lot of things that we are trying to accomplish by the end of the year, which is very exciting. But there's trade-offs, and we can't do everything. And the asks never stop. So, the demands of what a sales organization and other teams want from marketing are continuous. And so we have prioritized what we absolutely have to deliver this year, and we're not going to budge. And if something needs to be put on the plate, then something's got to come off. And in order for us, I would rather do fewer things very well than a lot of things average, like, haphazardly. And so a big thing I say is fewer, bigger, bolder. We're going to do fewer programs. We're going to do them bigger, and they're going to be bolder than we've done. And so that is a mindset that we've really started incorporating in the last couple of years that has served us well, because we put out a tremendous number of new products every year. And if we were just chasing the new products, campaigns, motion, we really wouldn't have an overarching Logitech for Business story or a solutions portfolio story. And we'd just be launching products. And that's very disconnected from the way that our buyers think about their jobs and what they're doing in their organization. So we really try and simplify for them the value that we bring to the table and show them that we actually can help them be better at their own jobs. And so I think that simplicity carries through in not only the way we build our programs, but in the way that we engage with our customers. We want to make everything simple and smart, and sustainable is a big one for us. And so
Mhm.
by breaking it down into simple, like almost 3 steps, it's much easier for the team to execute.
So you're saying that, it's a very busy time, different thing that you're working on now, but one initiative, and you touched on this very briefly, but I want to make it a couple more questions I have for it is one initiative that you and your team did bring to life is LogiWorks on Wheels. Can you tell me a little more about this initiative? I have a couple questions with it, but first, if you can tell us a little bit more about this initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. So Logitech really pulls together kind of two things. We focus on work and play. And so work is Logitech for Business, obviously, and part of our consumer business. Play is our gaming business, our gaming pillar. We have a gaming business. And so Logi Work is our thought leadership event platform. And these are global events that we do. We did 29 of them last year, where we show up with our customers and our partners. We talk about the future of work. We bring customers in to talk about their experiences and do some peer sharing, because our customers love to hear from their peers. And so these are big scale events that require a lot of work to do in each city. And we wanted to do something that was a little more scrappy and bring Logi Work to the road. So we decided to invest in this trailer that we have completely outfitted as a mobile office, that we pull around the United States, and we go to either our partners, so like our reseller partners who sell Logitech technology, or to a customer's big campus. And we invite them into the trailer to actually understand what a day in the life with Logitech technology is like in the workplace. And
Mm.
so we're bringing the big marquee events on the road to our customers. And it's something that, we were challenged to do. A couple of people that are on the team have worked at other companies much, much bigger than Logitech with much bigger budgets, and challenged me to, do something like this. And I was like, okay, I can do it. I'll take the challenge. And we did it as a trailer. And at first people laughed, but they
Mhm.
love it. We bring food trucks in, we do the events, we have games. And so it's really become kind of a culture of Logi Work on Wheels showing up, and it's fun. So that's what Logi Work on Wheels is.
So I think you might have answered this, but I want to see if it's anything a little bit deeper on Logi Work on Wheels. Is what were some of the business areas your team was trying to solve for?
Yes, it's really It's hard to always get people to show up to events. I think,
Okay.
during the pandemic, everything went virtual and everybody was doing virtual events. The pandemic ended, and then everybody was gangbusters wanting to host in-person events again. And you're competing for people's time, because you're asking them to leave their office, leave their job, or potentially give up, dinner time with their family. And
Mhm.
so, you have to have a really compelling reason for them to show up at your event, call it San Jose, Shanghai, Paris, wherever it is. And so we really wanted to make a way for it to even be easier, and that was to bring it to them. And so that was one of the big challenges that we were trying to address. And um, it's actually some of the other regions have picked up and done it as well because customers love it. They can say, like,
Mhm.
I'm customer X, please come to my campus and we're going to have all the employees come out, and check out your technology. Or I'm a reseller of Logitech's technology. I want you to train all of our salespeople. It's so much easier to bring it to them than
Mhm.
to get them to come to you. So that was really one of the big hurdles that we were trying to overcome.
Wow, that's I'm getting excited. I'm excited about it. So it kind of got me all, happy and like, wow. And again, I bring it back to education, thinking, wow, have you posed that problem to kids of how they can get their people to come to their campus and what,
Yeah.
because you talk about creativity and so much collaboration you're talking about and problem solving. Thank you for that. So the other
Yeah.
thing, though, that I wanted to ask you about Logi Work on Wheels is what have you learned from bringing that experience directly to customers, prospect partners, etc., and the impact that it did have on Logitech?
I will say the things we've learned is logistically, it's much harder than we anticipated.
Okay.
So, we're driving the trailers in Texas. We have to hire a driver who's a commercial licensed driver, so he drives it around. So, when you want to go on a tour, let's say we've got 9 stops, we're actually mapping out. It's like we're a truck driver. We're mapping out the routes and making sure that we're giving ourselves enough time to go from route A to route B. So, like, logistically, I think I really hadn't anticipated the effort that was in really the execution, if you will. Like, building the trailer was fun and creative, and but it really the logistical. So my team who has to support it sometimes is like, thanks, Aspen.
Yeah.
But then when they show up and see, the smile on the partner's face, the conversations they have, the fun that was had, when you see the pictures show up on LinkedIn and everybody, is reposting, it's so worth it. But, I really learned that sometimes you can have a good idea and just it's harder than it looks. So I would say that was one learning. But we've learned and we're still doing it. It's been a year in the works, and
Mhm.
I just saw another email that we're taking it out on the road again. So
Great.
if the demand's there and people are still enjoying it and learning, then it's obviously worth it.
So you're an inspiration and you work with so many teams. So Aspen, what qualities though consistently show up in high performing individuals?
A big one for me is grit.
Mm.
I look for grit in the people that we bring on the team. Resilience, um, transparency, and authenticity are things that come to mind. The way that I lead my team is I am pretty a transparent leader. I feel like the more that I can share with them and the why behind the asks really makes them invested in the outcomes. I've worked for managers before where it was just like, you were told or asked to do something, but you had no idea why. And if you questioned, like, could it be done a better way? And it was like, no, don't worry about it. I just need you to get that done. You're less invested in it.
Mhm.
So I feel like really the transparency that you bring to leadership is really important for the unification of the team. I feel like you mentioned it earlier, but technology and everything with AI is moving so incredibly quickly that a lot of the times our jobs are changing. The demands of our jobs are changing very quickly. And if you don't have people that are resilient or have grit, they can stick through it. They can work through things that may not be easy, that can be really hard for some people. And some people don't want to work in that type of environment. So when we're looking to hire, we look for people that we think can be flexible, that have resilience, that have grit and determination. Um, And then honesty, and I would say kindness,
Mm.
um, is such a kind of really important, quiet, but understated quality of people in corporate America today. Um, it can be sometimes cutthroat, and it usually all boils down to business. And while that's important, I also think that the people are really important and the culture is extremely important. Um, and so people who are really supportive of each other, I mean, our team, everybody needs to have each other's back. You can have conflict, you can have conversations, you can have dialogue, but you need to be in support of everybody on the team. And I really think that that's important. And the higher up in an organization you get, that trust is something that either makes or breaks a leadership team and an organization. And those things are really, really important to me, as somebody who's an employee of an organization and for the people on my team.
I can see why your own company is called Aspen Inspired because you're inspiring. So thank you. So on that note, if you were mentoring, and I know you do, someone at the start of their career though, who wanted to create a meaningful impact, and you talked about relationships, and I completely agree, but where would you tell them to begin?
I would tell anybody early in their career, because I think a lot of people think they have an idea of what they want to do. And they don't always. I have two college age students who think that they, know what they want to do with their lives. And I can already see like it's probably going to change many times before they get there. To try as many things as they can, to take risks, to raise their hand. Um, to do things that pull them out of their comfort zone. I can't tell you the number of times I've been uncomfortable in positions that I've had where somebody has seen something in me that I didn't see and thought that I was capable of something that I absolutely did not feel ready for. You never feel ready. Um, if you waited until you felt ready, so many opportunities would pass you by. So I would say, I guess it kind of goes back to risk taking, right? And being willing to jump into the water and get started. Because if you wait for that perfect moment, it's going to pass you by. So take risks, try lots of things, raise your hand. One that I think that is not recommended enough is to listen. I have learned so much from people who are quiet. It's not always the loudest voice. Sometimes it's the person who's sitting in the corner who's really keenly paying attention to everything going on in the room, and then either offers an opinion or something very quietly that may not feel like guidance, but there's so much to be learned from the people that sometimes are the quietest in the room. Um, and not the loudest. And sometimes I would even say that the loudest people in the room sometimes are maybe not the people
Mhm.
that you want to be listening to, because maybe there's a reason they're overstepping or being very boisterous. Um, but what I tell young team members of mine or my kids is, don't wait till you're ready. Take risks.
Mhm.
Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You'll get through it. It will get better, and you'll see what you're capable of. And the minute you see what you're capable of, the next time it feels so much better. So just continue again. It's that growth mindset. Keep continuing and pushing forward.
Mhm. I have one final question, and it really goes, I think everything you've been saying here is this podcast is titled Moving Forward, and you're constantly moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
So, what does moving forward actually mean to you, but not as a leader, but as a person?
This is a great question. I am very good at giving advice. I am not always good at taking it for myself.
Mm,
And so for me, moving forward as a person is really still learning how to strike that balance.
mm,
Um, I think I tie so much. I've always been, uh, I give more than 100% in jobs and everything I do. And I'm still like, why don't I give 100% to myself? So for me, it's a maturing still. So not as a leader, but as an individual, like that growth mindset needs to apply to myself as well outside of work. And I find it really hard as a working mom And as a mom, we have so much responsibilities, and it's not that our spouses aren't helping, but a lot of things fall on moms. And so I tend to prioritize everyone and everything else first. So it's family first, it's job first, and for me, growth is going to finally get to the point where I learned that I'm on equal footing and just as important. So that's, I always in my head when I say these things, I think of, the stewardess saying, when the airbag drops down, make sure you put it on your head first before you put it on your kids. And I'm like, this, Aspen, but like, why don't you do it? And so for me, the big thing in growth is going to be when I finally get to that point where I'm like, you are just as important as the job, as the kids, as the things. And so for me, that's going to be my growth goal as an adult.
Oh, I always don't like when interviews end and conversations end because this is, again, so inspiring for me too. And I know the listeners heard a lot. And Aspen, I want to thank you for such a clear and grounded conversation. You've reminded us that growth isn't something we talk about. It is something that we build into how we think, how we lead, and how we make decisions every day. I appreciate your honesty, your perspective, and the way you approach leadership with both discipline and action. And to those listening, take a moment to reflect on how growth is showing up in your own work and leadership, and where you may be ready to push just a little further. And thank you all for being here and for listening. Again, Aspen, thank you for taking the time.